Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us today and welcome to our RETCon multifamily webinar, What's Next in CRE Tech. I'm super excited today to be joined by David Perez, COO of Carroll Organization, and Rebecca Shaffrey, SVP of Corporate Services at Bell Partners. David and Becca, welcome.
Hi, James. Thank you for having us.
Of
Absolutely.
course.
Thank you.
Of course. I know everyone's super excited. Well, great. So one housekeeping item for everyone. This is a Zoom webinar. So there is on the bottom a question answer tab. If you have some questions that we're not covering, feel free to jump in, and if we can answer them during the webinar, we will. If not, we will answer them to the best of our abilities afterwards. So thank you again to everyone. Dave and Rebecca, let's start at the beginning, the start of a resident's journey. A lot of buzz around tours, virtual tours. What does that look like for you guys?
I'm happy to start with that. So, we really have embraced a lot of the technologies that allow us to do touring in a completely different way. We have done, I think, like many of our partners in multifamily, made sure that we had really great videos out on our websites where people land and they can help themselves and virtually tour themselves through those videos. We also have equipped all our teams with smartphones. So if they weren't able to prior to the pandemic, they have the ability to do what we call the selfie but guided tour and invite a prospect along, and while they walk around the community amenities as well as the apartment homes and tour that way. And then we have also enlisted some smart technologies that help capture that process and turn it into a link that can be shared back or can be an invitation out to a prospect to join at a particular time and go live through that tour, but then also use that link to share with another decision maker in the process as well. So I think we have tried, and then of course we have instituted some self-guided touring options so that if people choose to do that without a guided assistance of any kind, they have that option as well.
Interesting. David, what about Carroll?
Yeah, I can't add a ton to all the different options that are out there. I think from our viewpoint, though, we really started questioning, is that really the starting place that we should be interacting? And I think we've moved even further up the funnel and just trying to understand, what are they searching for before they even get to this, before residents or prospects even get to the decision to tour. What are they trying to figure out, and how can we help serve them further up in that sort of decision funnel and bring them on down as they're searching for an apartment? We've been exploring different we call it a reservation center kind of option. It's really an AI and human-centered touch point that just tries to pull them down as they're very early on in the journey, to answer their initial questions and get them to the touring place, the touring sort of place in their journey. From there, we kind of look at it in four different options, very much like Rebecca already described, two in-person kinds of options, and then two virtual kinds of options for residents to walk through at their own pace and leisure. Rebecca, I'm not sure. I mean, we haven't been able to quite quantify exactly how many are versus how many were wanting to prior to instituting all this technological change. I used to really think about it as more of a 80-20 rule, like 80% of people really wanted to see something in person. I think probably that's gone down somewhat, but do you have any thoughts on sort of the scale of what and how many people are, opting for that virtual kind of in-person thing versus in person?
I think that's still something we closely are trying to monitor and measure as well. And really, we felt like there certainly, as people suspected, in some of our markets where we were not able to in-person tour, we started to see certainly higher adoption to some of the virtual stuff. We have not seen that scale back as much as we would have thought as those markets have reopened. And we're still seeing some significant volume out there. I think the other thing that's interesting, David, you started at a place I also think we have noticed the same thing. We put bots out on our ILSs and our website to kind of grab the activity that we saw out there of that first genuine interest in who are you and would I live there and what am I trying to answer. And we've seen some really exciting numbers in that space as well, of helping draw that down and then turn that or drive that to the appointment and tour space and to one of those solutions. So, you know, I think that the story today will certainly not, the story yesterday is not the story today, and certainly won't be the story tomorrow as we watch that. And that's kind of the name of the game we've decided in this space, is that it's a good thing we like change, and we're kind of change junkies over at Bell, because that is really what we're seeing is as our customers' needs change, and staying up with that and in tune to that is going to be critical in helping you make the decisions on which solutions are the right ones to have in place to help with that.
What are your thoughts on the effectiveness of all these virtual strategies? Is there still a need for an in-person tour? Do people still like that, or are virtual tours the future?
My viewpoint is still that it is still necessary, and that, I mean, I think that's what we were kind of just touching on, is that the majority of people still want to touch, see, feel like the environment around where they're going to live for potentially the next year. We still look at it from a viewpoint of it's a considered purchase. It is the largest purchase that most people make every single year. And if you look at other considered purchases that are out there, buying a car, people still want to see what that car, you know, looks like, touch it, you know, get into it, drive it before they, you know, go and spend some time with it. You know, they take some time to get to know it because it is going to be such a large purchase. Mm-hmm. So while these other things and situations occur in people's lives where they're like, yeah, I have to live somewhere, I'm still going to spend the money. So you might have these, what we used to consider more fringe cases in the virtual tour kind of space. They're now critical for us to have as an option to gather additional people. You still have to have that in-person ability and walk through kind of mentality.
I would totally agree with that. And I think that we are experiencing the same thing. I also would just add that I think what we're also learning is it's not a one size fits all. So depending on your demographic, your portfolio, your asset class, all of that, those are the considerations that you really need to be able to monitor and measure so that you can implement the right solution. So what might work in Atlanta, where David is, may not work in Charleston, South Carolina as well. And being nimble and understanding not what solutions, but the right solutions to select from, to institute based on some of those factors is critical to driving your ultimate success, I think, through technology.
Yeah, definitely. Something we touched on a little bit as we went through this, as we're analyzing effectiveness, is data. And that's really a big buzzword right now, has been for a while. And now there's a ton of it out there, but it's really analyzing it and using it the right way that's important. How are you all thinking about data?
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, we spend a lot of time on data. And we have spent a lot of money and investment in the data because we think that it is really what is helping us determine those nuances that I just spoke about. What not the one size fits all, but break that mold to really understand how to spend those dollars and what will be most effective. So, and data can help you drive great operational efficiencies. Kind of blending into smart technology as well, of everything from when to dump your trash cans to when to change out an HVAC and some other things. So data is not just on the front end and the forefront or the front door of our business. It certainly is helping run the house, and then also telling us a lot of great things about why people are leaving us and where they're going and all of that. So we believe strongly in data and the investment in that evolving, and there's some great solutions technically out there for data if you don't have your own internal department.
Yeah, and along those lines, and it sounds like, Rebecca, your team has spent a lot of time thinking about what questions they want to answer, because I think you can boil the ocean if you just start diving into what your ERP system has, whether it's Yardi or RealPage or whoever your back end is. They capture more information than you could ever possibly imagine. So starting with, all right, well, what do we want to know, and really going, all right, let's figure out how to answer this question using what we have, and if we can't answer it, what else do we need to answer that, is really the right approach to leveraging data in today's environment, because of how much data. And I always like to quote the stat, but I don't know what it is, but it's like, there's been more data created in the last 10 years than 100 years combined before that, or something like that. And it's just insane. And every single day, it just continues to escalate in almost a parabolic kind of fashion, how much data and different things we're collecting. And as soon as you start moving into smart devices and IoT devices, they're going to start capturing, everybody's movements, and then starting to get things in and around ESG, particularly around sustainability, and how you start factoring that into all the other additional data that you're trying to mesh together. If you don't have a structure for how do I need to answer these critical business questions, you'll just get lost in all the data that's available to us today.
Absolutely.
Interesting. David, something you mentioned was, smart amenities, IoT, buildings of the future. How are you guys thinking about that? And what digital amenities are you finding that residents really are latching onto?
I think simple is better right now is what we're finding. I think, a interconnected, ease of use kind of smart home, the thermostats, seem to be popular, and the locks seem to be popular. They're sort of seamless, easy to use, and frankly, easy on the back end to maintain. We've gotten, fairly good adoption on that, where it's just it's not a large lift from that standpoint. There's a lot of buzz around sort of tagging, particularly like equipment kinds of things. So like leak detection, I think is an easier one to get to, but then they're starting to maybe try and tag like HVAC systems and other kinds of maybe electrical components or other systems that you might have in place. And I think that is certainly something in the future, but that's much more on the owner and maintenance and proactive sort of maintenance kind of suite that's out there. But again, getting back to what do people really want, it seems to be a little bit more of a ease of life, ease of use kind of concept.
I would agree. And I think this is another area in our industry that is evolving, and the definition of what that term even really means as we move forward seems to ever be changing. I think some of what we've seen is that a move towards anything that can be censored is really, an operator's demand of like, if we can censor, or vendors are coming at us with, if we can censor your gates, your, storage lockers, your package stuff, your amenities, and have that be efficient. That seems to be a trend with all the censoring abilities in that smart space, as well as within the apartment homes themselves. But back to what David said, I think our experience really has been from our customers' standpoint that really it's the locks and the thermostats, and then maybe the only other addition I would make is maybe the doorbells and the camera, smart ring doorbell kind of solutions.
Yeah, that's interesting. There's a lot going on right now. And so it's important to that as well. Resident engagement, retention. Of course, there are these things that can help boost a resident's experience, but part of that experience is their attachment to the community of the building. And I know that's super important to both of you. I'm curious to hear what you all are doing digitally right now when you can't bring folks together in person.
At Bell, we have, our part of our purpose and our mission statement is to remain focused as we have in years past on the customer experience and really creating communities that our residents are really proud to call their homes. And I think part of that is finding a way to do that, certainly during a pandemic. How do you create community? So there are great technologies out there that have taken that digitally and have provide some great solutions. Our experience really started with helping them manage their life and their apartment life when they couldn't come in and talk to our staff as they were used to, focusing on an app or a solution or something that would allow them to do all your just normal things, pay rent, service requests, all that stuff in the most efficient way possible. And I think as we've grown and interviewed more solutions in the maybe creating activities or things like that, it's been important to us that we didn't get app overload and that there is seamless integration so that our resident experience could remain in one place and we weren't sending them in multiple locations to try to create that sense of community that we were trying to do virtually for them. So that's been sort of our lens or approach towards that particular part of the business.
Interesting. David, any thoughts?
Yeah, it's very much in the same line as how Bell is thinking. I think we may even cross over there a little bit on sort of how important our customer experience is to us and how we're really sort of driving that home. Well, before the pandemic started, we had sort of this Experience Arium program that was really just a way for our people. It was almost like we gamified touch points with our residents. And then we sort of celebrated them internally, and we showed off kind of how we were celebrating and interacting with our residents. As the pandemic really came on, we've really focused our efforts. And this kind of goes to a little bit of where our lead management and sort of prospect management and what we focused on there was to pull away from some of that initial funnel responsibility from on-site teams to more of a technological focus so that our on-site teams could focus way more on that resident and resident experience, making personal phone calls every week, connecting with each of our residents and understanding where they were, how they were doing, and how we could possibly help them. From there, we've really tried to focus on removing barriers for our residents. They're here living with us, and living with us should be super easy. And that's really our focus. So if anything, even to like Rebecca's point around like app overload or anything, if it makes it harder for people to live with us, we're sort of not doing it. We're eliminating those kinds of things. We want it to be, we want them to know where they live, but we don't want them to sort of say, oh, now I have to go and have this kind of tough conversation or come home and deal with this neighbor, or, now I have to go through 3 firewalls to pay my rent, or, I know my internet's going to be out because we have got this terrible thing. So literally anything that we go forward with is like, is it going to be easier for the resident to live with us? And if the answer is yes, we start exploring further.
I think I would just add to what David started our webinar with as well, that I think we're aligned with Carol in that we believe people want to live with us and make their initial decision largely because of their experience with us, however that came about. And they genuinely do want that personal touch, and that doesn't end after the initial selection of the home. So the critical touch that David speaks about and maintaining those relationships with our customers as they live with us, I don't believe will ever go away. I think that it continues to allow them to understand and feel comfortable with their initial decision and helps determine their decisions for their future. So the high touch, I think there's no amount of technology that can replace the work our teams do to really foster and care for that customer.
Yeah, definitely interesting. We have a question from the audience, actually. So as much as the two of you are able to answer this, from Eric Spies, does the operations element for managed Wi-Fi, for example, sub-metering and leak detection, hit a different line item during the budgeting for new projects? Any thoughts there? Maybe for someone else on the team?
Well, I'm not sure that I completely
yeah,
understand the
I'm-
question.
In terms of
The
budget,
operations element for managed Wi-Fi.
are you thinking about Wi-Fi differently? Are you budgeting it differently as you're approaching new projects?
Well, I'm confused with the submetering and leak detection. I guess to the extent that they're saying how it's getting recorded. Okay, so you're installing those devices and then the actual cost of operating that device on a monthly basis. So I would say that the device itself, to the extent that, obviously it lasts longer than a year. Once it's installed, I would throw that in the capital. And then, yes, likely the operating cost of the Wi-Fi itself would be an OpEx item that I would put above the line.
We would do the same. If that's the ask, that would absolutely be true at Bell.
Awesome. Well, appreciate y'all jumping in on that one. We've talked a lot about, the apartment building or the portfolio, but something else technology has a huge impact on is your internal teams and even training. Rebecca, I know you guys are doing a ton of that. Would love to hear more.
Yeah, we just did. Bell annually has a leadership conference that is all of our community managers and maintenance managers coming into in person to one physical location for a week of learning and celebration. And that has been part of our path for all of my 11 years here at Bell and even before me. And this was our first year doing that virtually. So we experienced a virtual conference and really exciting. I think that regardless of how our world evolves and if we even come back out of that, there were tremendous benefits to be able to include pieces of not just our leaders, but the entire team and on-site teams into portions of our speakers and other things that were really powerful. Then in our day-to-day training and certainly our by role and ongoing and compliance and safety and all the things that go into our training experience, platforms like this one have allowed us to continue to be connected and maybe connected even at leadership levels and with more regularity than we had been able to do in past. And I think we probably, like every other company out there, utilize all the platforms and tools that will help us stay connected. And we had already had an electronic environment in university via our LMS, but just connecting all of that together has been great. And if you've never done a Zoom room, it is really absolutely fascinating to be here talking with you now, and then your facilitator zooms you out into another. It's almost like Jetsons or something, and that dates me and tells you how old I am. But zaps you into another think room with some select individuals to maybe do a deeper dive or a smaller group. Lots of fun in the technology space around training and connection.
That's interesting. David, anything interesting you guys are doing?
Yeah, we're actually in the middle of our virtual summit. Like Bell, we generally had it in person. Last year, right as things shut down, we were supposed to have our 3-day conference here in Atlanta and had to completely cancel it, and then went into triage mode and didn't really get to have the full experience. We really use it for a jumping off point to the year and a way to set things off and do a lot of great sharing and training through that. we are transforming and have been transforming, because in-person training, while great, is not completely scalable, and we have to be realistic with the demands of the industry and demands of the talent that we have in the industry and how transactional the industry is. If we're fortunate to have people for as long as 6, 7, 8 years, that's fantastic, but we have to be realistic around the higher turnover volume, particularly at this sort of the entry level points of the industry, and having a great digital platform in which you can get people job ready as soon as possible, and have them a great sort of onboarding experience as well, is a key focus that we really double down on, and are going to continue to focus to build out, because we just feel like it's the best way to connect. And even if you and I are sitting here and having a great training back and forth, we can see each other. You sort of still get that human connection, and you feel like you're really kind of sitting in the same room. And while it makes it, there's even, I like using a whiteboard as I have here behind me, but there's even digital whiteboard kind of elements where you can share whiteboards with teams and have some of these events where normally you travel or normally you try and gather in some cities to get stuff done. You can do it more virtually. And I've even had commentary from our virtual summit this week already from some of our regionals, like, hey, this is so great. I still have half a day to do work. I'm not traveling. I'm not, doing anything else. And they can still get me the reports I need.
Yes, very productive these days. And something as well, talk about training, the nature of work is changing so much. And with technologies just, kind of popping up all over multifamily in very exciting ways. It's changing the types of people that you're looking to hire, or maybe the skills that you need to build up of current employees. How are you guys thinking about that?
I think that's definitely true. I'm sure we're, like many others, came from a place of almost overnight, a lot of us, whether at all levels within the organization, had to learn new skills and maybe get ourselves from where we were to new levels. And we've put an internal focus on really understanding where our great associates were in their learning and development, and making sure that we had a focused effort to help them climb quickly into the environments that we knew would help them be successful. So I think that, while our customers and our residents that live with us went to electronic payments, and we saw those percentages skyrocket almost overnight, so did the success of our associates with some targeted training to get them maybe from a space that was not as familiar to a good familiar space, to be able to adapt quickly and also absorb some of the new technologies and new methods that we use for communication, training, all of that kind of thing.
Interesting. David, what do you think?
It's been a lot more around change management for us. It is like we must believe and sort of have I kind of view technology as the third step in the process of how do you do it bigger, better, faster, stronger. You have to have sort of the right process in place first, doing the right things or saying you want to do the right things, and then you sort of layer on people, and then in order to do that task more or faster or automate it, you layer on the technology aspect. The people, though, are still critical, important in leveraging that technology. It's not just going to run itself. So the focus around change management has been critical for us, and saying, here's where we're going, here's where everybody else is going, we must get there, and this is why. And bringing people along to that point. We've had some people select out. They sort of don't see the forest for the trees sometimes, and think that, well, I've been doing this for 25 years, and I'm going to continue doing it this way because this is the way that it's been done. But I think we already covered that the consumer has changed, and the way the consumer shops has changed, and that's ultimately who we're here to cater to, is the consumer, and that consumer says, hey, look, I'd like to be able to visit this thing virtually and look at all these pictures, then you can say, hey, look, we're not going to have a sale if we don't do it this way. And if people still don't want to do it that way, then you're kind of like, okay, well, you sort of decided on your own the ways that you want to interact, and we have to be forward thinking and move here forward as a company to get there.
I think you touched on it, David, too. Like, you have to know where your people are currently to know what your strategy, the right strategy and plan to get them where you are trying to get them to go. So having a realistic way to pulse and know where are my opportunities and what path is needed to, and what does the bridge look like from the today picture to the tomorrow picture, so that you just don't go implement and assume overnight somebody who has no technology experience is going to now be the expert and know how to, even with a simple training session, make that leap and be successful in doing so. So I think it takes patience. I think sometimes as organizations, we can see where we need to be and we hurry to try to get there. And I think you'll end up doing stuff time and again, rather than one way, the right way, if you lack the patience to really understand what's needed to successfully do it one time and do it well and right.
Yeah, for sure. I know I love the opportunity that technology has opened up. I mean, even just from a sales perspective, you all can reach residents anywhere. Essentially, your pool is massive. So I think outlining that opportunity for folks really is important. And we've talked a lot about a ton of different technologies. Multifamily is innovating so quickly, and it's so awesome. But folks are getting approached by a ton of different tech companies that are revolutionizing their portfolios, and decisions do have to be made on which technologies you're going to adopt. Now, unfortunately, not all of us have unlimited budgets. So how are you thinking about the technologies? How should folks be thinking about which tech they should be adopting for their portfolios?
So we, always start with, and I think David touched on this too, like, what problem do we have and are we trying to solve? And I think coupled with, where are our people and our customers spending their time? And is there a better solution that creates efficiencies so that there is more time and capacity to focus in areas we know are truly beneficial to the business? So I think if you kind of start with what problem are we trying to solve? Not, hey, does this look like something we should try? You will answer your questions around how to spend your dollars. And you will find that you can partner and couple solutions and not have to do everything and just try to guess which ones, or wait to see which ones kind of shake out for you. So our approach has really been, let's start with what problems we're trying to solve first and find great solutions that can help us with those problems.
Yeah, absolutely right there, Becca. I mean, it is critical that you don't take the spray and pray approach, as I like to call it. And I just,
like that.
yeah, it's I can't tell you like how many of our partners or any of these vendors try and sell me on the immediate value in the property by just installing one of their new revenue share options that pays for itself as soon as I roll it out, and immediately increases value. It is trying to figure out is like where you really need to understand who your customer is and how they buy ultimately. We really lay out the customer journey, and then we just layer in all the touch points that we have and other opportunities to what we call is add value to that resident's life. It's not a hey, what kind of other money can then we just extract from them? Because really on the end of that is that we're investing in this person, and they're giving us their money, making an investment in their value or their life in which they're living with us at that point in time. So they're expecting something in return. And when they're expecting that in return, if it's not enhancing their value, then we're just not going to do it. It really needs to be sort of this true ROI kind of concept. Even the most simple things, and we've got a lot of workforce kinds of things where if we can sit there and say, hey, we can get rid of all these laundromats, because for the amount that they put in those laundromats, we can just give them washer dryers and get them installed and put them in there. Yes, that's not necessarily technology, but it's the same kind of concept in that the resident will pay for that because they're getting value in that they're not walking to the laundry facility every time. They're not having to drop coins. And we're not charging them probably more than what they were going to spend anyway at the laundromat to get all their stuff done. And that's the same kind of concept that I think throwing in technology is, what is the problem? What is the problem we're trying to solve here? Whether that's giving our people time back to connect with residents, to drive the business plan forward, to understand insights that are going on in the community, or even like just give back time because all our people are overworked over the last year. Those are all important things. Like, we should be getting return, whether that's return to our employees or return to our value to our customers when we invest in anything.
I think the only last thing I would add is that as you're selecting whatever the answer to those questions are that you've asked or identified for your group, I would lend that you also want to know, as the customer experience is not just a one stop, it's multiple stops along the journey, and solutions can provide efficiencies or help in all of those areas. You want to make sure that whoever you're selecting understands your journey and also is willing to work together with other solutions and with your property management system so that there's a seamless integration. And the experience doesn't just solve one piece of the puzzle, even if it just solves one piece of the puzzle, that it works fluidly with the other solutions or the other parts of the process. So some hiccups have come where we've tried out solutions and it disjointed the whole experience for the customer, which is only going to frustrate them and do the opposite of what your intent is.
And in closing, we've been talking about a ton of innovations, and I think real estate is finally catching up with technology. But traditionally, it has been a little bit slow to adopt new innovations and technologies. And I think folks have really adopted things quickly. But for folks maybe who haven't, or maybe they've adopted virtual tours because they've had to, and that's been their kind of stopping point, what advice do you have for them?
I think it's have the right question in mind. I know we've harped on it a little bit, but it's what are you really trying to solve? And is it going to make it easier for your customer? It's got to be a customer-centric mindset because they're the ones that are ultimately paying you for that service you're providing them. So as you go through and you're thinking through what technology you want to really deploy or understand, and there's a lot out there, and it's, you look at all these VC funds, and as great as Fifth Wall and Navitas and whoever else are publishing and doing a lot of stuff, and they're certainly, smart guys and know what they're doing. Not everything is made for who your customer is, and Becca put it, succinctly. As much as I want it to be a portfolio-wide view, things that work for customers in Atlanta may not work for customers in Charleston or Greensboro or Texas or Vegas. You have to be sort of flexible in meeting your customer where they are and what they need.
I think our technology and the evolution we've seen in the last 2 years, 3 years in this business will continue to grow and move beyond. And David said it best in that you need to just always my advice would be keep staying aligned with who your customer really is, and don't get distracted by all the new bright, shiny things. That ultimately we're a people business and will remain a people business. So if you're in tune with your people, whether those are the ones coming in or the ones currently with you or the ones that work for you, you'll make the right decisions if that's the focus and the experience the technology provides for them.
That's great. I love that. Well, Becca and David, thank you so much for joining. We really appreciate it. I know everyone in the audience is giving a round of applause. We can't hear them right now, but I know it's happening. Really, really grateful for that. For everyone tuning in, thank you so much for joining. As always, we're RETCon, your place for innovation in technology and real estate. Next week, we have our Build conference spread across Tuesday to Wednesday. Great summit to talk about all the innovations in construction, design, and development. So looking forward to seeing everyone there. We'll see you soon. Bye, everyone.
Thanks, Becca.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
James.
Thank you.
Bye.